Okay, thinking about Mike Mader's problem with trying to work on these screwdriver handles and not having a chuck to do the work that he needs to. He's been attempting to drill on the drill press and get a consistent hole for the shaft of the screwdriver handles that he's trying to make, and he's having issues with that. So I was doing a little bit of thinking earlier today, and I think maybe with a homemade screw chuck that it would hold the blank enough, provided you have enough length in the blank to at least allow you to drill on the lathe and keep hopefully everything concentric. There's no guarantees. Part of his problem could be the grind on the front of the drill bit. I really don't know. I think he's just using a standard drill bit rather than a brad point or even a Forstner bit. So that may be something that he needs to look into some more. So this is what I came up with. Seeing how he don't have a chuck, I have a 4-inch faceplate for my lathe. His lathe, the 46460, comes with a 3-inch faceplate. The trick is to get everything all centered up in there so that the screw, once it's turned round with the faceplate, is centered in there. If it's off center by more than, maybe a 64th of an inch or so, then it's going to create a lot of issues for trying to turn something around. So it's going to have to be pretty close as we can get it. So here's what I propose on doing is we're going to take this, and this is just a piece of poplar that I had laying here in the shop. We're going to find center on it, and we're going to take this over to the drill press, and we're going to counterbore this on the back side, and we're going to counterbore it deep enough to sink the head of the lag bolt. And this is just simply I think it's a 1/4 inch or 3/16 inch lag bolt. But we're going to put a counterbore on the back side of this deep enough to have this bolt head flush or below the bottom or the surface of this. So to do that, I'm going to need about a 5/8 hole, but for ease I'm going to make it 3/4, because I want to make sure that once the faceplate gets mounted on here like this, I want to make sure that even if this block is off on the drilling of the 1/4 inch hole for the chuck, that that it'll still have enough room in there to center the bolt up correctly in the drilled hole that we're going to drill right on the lathe. So I'm going to go over to the drill press. I'm going to take a 5/8 or 3/4 inch Forstner bit, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to countersink a hole in here about a 1/4 of an inch deep, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I went over and I counterbored a hole into it. I just want to check the depth and make sure that my bolt head is going to be. So what's going to happen is now we're going to take our faceplate and we're going to mount the faceplate directly onto the block of wood that I have here. find my screwdriver. And I'm going to use 1-inch screws. The best screws to use are anything but drywall screws. Drywall screws are too brittle to do this with. Drywall screws are never recommended for any kind of faceplate work at all. They're just too brittle and they run the risk of snapping. So I'm going to run 3 screws into this. Centered it up on my block just as, as good as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect for this step. So now I'm going to take this block and I'm going to go over to my lathe and I'm going to mount it up on the lathe. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole in here that's big enough to accept the shank of this screw. And it might even be smaller. The problem being is you want to get it centered as well as you can. So that's going to be the issue, and we'll see how that turns out. I haven't done a practice run, so this is the first time I've tried this to make this, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring the tailstock in. We're going to put a Jacob's chuck in the tailstock, and I've got to get my calipers and have to measure the major diameter of this lag bolt that I have. And it's just barely under 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to use a 1/4 of an inch drill bit. And I'm going to drill a through hole all the way through that blank. Once I get that done, then I'm going to take and push this lag bolt in from the back side and get it to seat down in there. After that, we're going to take some epoxy. I'm going to epoxy the head of that bolt into the back of the block, and hopefully, with a little bit of luck, I won't stick my faceplate to the block. If I do, it's not the end of the world. I can always turn it all off to get rid of it, but I'd rather not do it if I can help it. So what we're going to do is everything is good. We already know that we've got the countersink hole on the back side to allow for the thickness of the head. This is going to center the bolt up into the piece of wood that we've got mounted there. So with that said, we're going to drill this all the way through. I'm going to pull the faceplate back off of the lathe. My bit didn't go quite deep enough on there. Okay. Okay, I'm going to clean up what little bit of blowout that I had on the back side. I'm going to try and get this screw to go down through there now. It's a little bit on the big side, but I think with the epoxy going in there that we're going to be okay with this. So I'm going to go mix up a little bit of epoxy, and I'm going to put epoxy in this, and I'm going to epoxy this screw in here. Then we'll see how it all comes out after it's all done. Okay, so I don't have any 5-minute epoxy in my shop right now. I ran out. My old stuff went bad and I ended up having to throw it away. But what I do have is West System epoxy. It's a 2-part epoxy. Kind of on the expensive side, but I've had it for years and years and years and been working on this can for a long, long time. So anyway, all I'm doing is mixing up some epoxy. I've just set the bolt down inside of one of my dog holes on the bench. Use my finger and kind of push it down, make sure that it's as square as I can get it for right now. And I'm just going to take and dribble some epoxy without getting it all over the threads of my faceplate. I'm going to allow that to set up. Okay, in probably 20 minutes or so, that will be set up enough to further do what we need to do. All right, I'll make a part 2 when that's set up and we get back onto the lathe.